Hi, I'm Winea. So let's talk about Uranian versus Plutonian energy. I feel like both of these energies are really polarizing and quite controversial and even provocative in and of themselves. And I think they're really good energies to compare because of this, because they do share that in common, but they also express themselves wildly different. And if you put a Plutonian archetype person or some sort of symbolism representation of it versus something that was Uranian, you would see the stark differences visually, but also in essence, if it was people, they would carry a very different vibe about them. And I don't know, I think I was just reading people's charts earlier today, and it Plutonian energy and Uranian energy came up an awful lot, and I just got really intrigued about how they kind of mirror each other but also differ wildly. And so I just wanted to talk about it. I just wanted to come in here and ramble about it a little bit. So this is my stream of consciousness with these energies. I'm just going to look at my notes. So I think both, well, any planetary energy will experience projection from people. Any person that's living and breathing has experienced people projecting on them. And in particular, Uranian and Plutonian energy will get a lot of judgment because they give off these controversial, outside of the box, in their own bounds sort of energy that other people will look at, and it will stir something inside of them. Uranian energy will kind of get people questioning what is real and what keeps us the way that we are. Like, you'll start questioning, why do we follow these certain rules? Why do we just do these things? Why have we never questioned them? Why did we stop questioning them? That sort of thing. They'll really, a Uranian person will really challenge your way of thinking about systems or how things are done, whether it's just how you think, it's how you dress, it's how you behave, it's your belief systems, anything like that, your relationships. It would just kind of shake you up because of this person just existing and living their life. You talk to them for 5 minutes, or you hear an interview of theirs, or you see how they dress, and you kind of glean a little bit of how their lifestyle is, and you'll kind of be like, they really get to be free like that. Why? I don't think I could live like that. But if I could, what would it look like? How come I can't live like that? Maybe that is really freeing. Maybe that is liberating. Maybe I would like that. Maybe you wouldn't like all of it, but you might like elements of it. And so there's a freedom that the Uranian person tends to have, or a group of Uranian people tend to have, or anything that is in the subject matter of Uranus will be appealing because it looks liberating, it looks freeing. Plutonian energy, Plutonian people will be polarizing because you'll either feel an intense attraction and draw towards a Plutonian person or something that is very Plutonian in energy, or you'll feel an intense rejection of it. It might even feel like hate. It might even feel like disgust. But Plutonian energy tends to be reflecting back to you parts of yourself that you're not looking at. It would be like if you had a mirror that somehow didn't show you your literal physical reflection, but it showed you your soul, and it showed you the parts of your soul or your subconscious that you refuse to acknowledge or refuse to integrate into yourself. And that's where you can see why Plutonian energy, or even Scorpios especially, can sort of elicit these really intense reactions from people. People either love them or they hate them. And that's because they're almost a walking shadow. Now, I don't want all the Scorpios out there to get a big head and think that you're out there to just change the world, although you guys definitely transform. I'm not dogpiling on you at all either. But that energy comes with great responsibility, because I can imagine you just want to be enjoying yourself and forming genuine connections with people, and you're trying to show who you are, but people keep projecting their things onto you. And I feel like that can be really frustrating for a lot of Plutonian people. And I think Uranian people don't get as frustrated by it at first, because there's an element of detachedness. They're so committed to how they are, their mission, or the way they live their life, and they know that they're going to get people that hate them. They've already detach themselves from it, it works up a bit of effort for them to get bothered by it. I think it's more when they meet resistance, when they really have put a plan in place and really tried to bring something to life, and they have all the facts there, and what they're doing is truly innovative or genius, or it's going to transform something and upgrade something, and they have all the material there, all the facts, everything, and then people reject it. Then that's when their frustration may come in more. They're not really looking to be liked. I don't particularly think that Plutonians are looking to be liked either. I think they kind of expect to be projected on and hated, and so they kind of can isolate or just stick to where they know they're going to be received. But there's a little bit more of that emotional element where, like, it does bother them a little, you can tell. And that's not just because it's often associated with Scorpios, but I find that Pluto has a fire in it. As much as Pluto is a more distant planet, and technically it's not a planet, but it is whatever, it's seen kind of as like a cool, like far away cold planet type of thing, and it's not. I find it to be quite fiery, and it's no mystery that Scorpio is co-ruled with Mars as well as Pluto, because I feel like Mars and Pluto play into each other quite a bit, and they are kind of about a battle. Mars is like war in the traditional sense and of really physical exertion, whereas Pluto, I think, is more about an internal battle. It's psychological, it's transformative in that more inner or intangible way, whereas Mars is like brute force and it often deals with physical. So anyway, side tangent. But I think that's kind of how you can see where they are the same but a little different. So Uranian energy, to me, is, it gets projected on because, and people who have that energy, because they are foreign. They're looked at like, think of, if you can think of someone who's really Uranian, like maybe a celebrity who has a lot of Uranian. I mean, I don't know his chart, but David Bowie is somebody that comes across as like total Uranian energy. The way that that man moved through different genres and found his niche, and the way that he dressed and expressed himself was so, he was androgynous, and that's Uranian energy, and that's Uranian people. They give an androgyny. It might be in their literal facial structure and their body, or it could just be in how they choose to style themselves when they change their appearance with their hair, with changing their brows, with doing their makeup, with what they dress, the colors they use, the way that they act and they speak. They could be gender fluid or come across as more gender fluid, if not just androgynous, you know, maybe more of a feminine, masculine sort of man, and like more of a masculine sort of woman. It's kind of that energy. It confuses you a little bit, but at the same time, it's like, it's otherworldly and it draws you in a little bit. Not necessarily ethereal, the way maybe Neptunian energy would be, but certainly there's such an intrigue because it gets your brain questioning. It's sort of like when you see Uncanny Valley, sometimes it can make you scared. And usually when you hear that saying, it is like, it's kind of negative. It's seen as like, oh, that's kind of ugly or really scary or grotesque or something. But I don't mean it in this way, because Uranian energy can get misunderstood and people can just be like, that's weird, you know, but it has depth. There's layers to it. And I think what it speaks on is more that people are afraid of what they don't know. They're afraid of the unknown. And Uranian energy deals with innovation. It deals with something that you don't know yet. It's the mad scientist. It's the humanitarian that's trying to build a world that gets closer to being maybe a utopia, or just a better place. And people think you're crazy because they're like, so many things are corrupt. But Uranian energy is here to be like, yeah, but I'm here to shake shit up. Because Uranian energy is like, bam, sudden change. And so is Pluto. So that's why the two of them are like this. So I think people project on Uranian energy because it's confusing to them. They're like, that's odd, that's or a little wacky or eccentric, or that doesn't make sense. They're doing something that looks like it's out of a sci-fi movie. And that's just because they don't understand it. And I think if they were to look in, and if we look at it from more of like a shadow work sort of perspective, it's more like, there's parts of you that are afraid to step outside of the box. There are parts of you that are afraid to maybe experiment or try something different or dare to be different. And that can be scary because so many of us work so hard all our lives to be the same or to fit in somewhere. And so we'll play up qualities in our personality that blend best with the group, and we'll focus on that. And then we'll kind of mute the other parts of ourselves, or keep that to ourselves, or keep that to this one other person in our life that might share this interest with us or whatever. And you end up fragmenting your life in different sections. And although that isn't always a bad thing, because no one person or one place can give you literally everything you need, it can sometimes separate you, and you can feel like, who am I? And where do I belong? And I think Plutonian energy and Uranian energy can feel that way a lot in their life. I think Uranian energy accepts that they are different, but trusts that at some point they're going to find their people, or that they're okay with not being like everybody else, so long as their ideas and the things that they produce end up landing somewhere and being for something. They're okay with it. But Uranian energy is probably not going to get realized as a genius as much as they should until their time is done, until they're a lot older or they're not here anymore. Like, think of Vincent van Gogh. Again, don't know his chart, couldn't tell you if he actually had a lot of Uranus. I think he was a Pisces, if I remember correctly. I could be making that up. But it's kind of like no one really acknowledged him to the level that they do now until he died. And that's kind of Uranian energy. It's like, you're not really going to get realized for what you do. It's like anyone that made a huge amount of innovation or progress in history, whether it was technology, which Uranus likes to deal with, because that's very future forward and sort of thing. Anyway, technology or science in general, medicine, fashion, any of those things, or an everyday sort of situation like a light bulb or something. You look at Nikola Tesla, don't know his chart, but he wasn't realized for his genius, and he was suppressed quite a bit, and he was looked at as mad at the time that he was alive. And that's sort of Uranian energy. And I just think it's misunderstood because people project on it quite a bit, because they don't want to understand it, because it scares them, because it makes them look at, well, maybe I'm living a life that's caged. Maybe I'm not fully realizing myself or expressing myself the way that I do. And so it's really so interesting to me that some people can look at a person dress in the brightest colors, in all these different textures, and look at them and say, why would you do that? What's the point of that? And it's like, well, they're expressing themselves, they're being free, and they're not doing it to get attention the way that you think. They're doing it to express themselves, and they're doing it because it might be more practical for them to dress that way. It might be more freeing or fun or whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to be for some profound reason all the time, and it doesn't always have to be a way that you want them to. And I find that Uranian people can be truly misunderstood because whatever they're doing doesn't make sense to the status quo. You know, you can have musical artists who put out a certain sound, and maybe it's like really heavily synth or some sort of dance music, and people are like, well, why would we listen to this? It just sounds like robots or something. And then give it 5 years and everybody's doing that in their music. And it's like, well, that was ahead of its time. You just kind of had to give it a chance. And yeah, anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, but let me just look at my notes because I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so Uranian energy feels really iconoclastic. So it really has its own lane, and people can get threatened by that. Uranian people are not trying to be leaders. They're not doing it for the ego, largely. I mean, some people probably are, but we're talking about the archetype purely right now, manifesting in people. It's not doing it for the ego so that it can be like, oh my God, look at me. Look, I was a part of history. You know, I have this legacy that I've created or whatever. It's like, I have a cause that I believe in, and I'm really just gonna, out of the pure passion for it, but also the vision. It's like they have this psychic vision. Think of a mad scientist that I mentioned earlier. Anything that someone has invented that we have never conceptualized in history before had to be some sort of psychic or some sort of like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like visions, being able to see an object that doesn't exist and bring it to life and make it functional, and then it revolutionizes humanity. That's Uranian energy. So they stick out. They have to be isolated so that they can work on their genius. They have to be different and live life differently, because if they lived life the way the rest of us do, they wouldn't have the time or the energy to dedicate to making this invention or fighting for this cause. They have to be unconventional. Otherwise, society would look very different. We might have just stayed the exact same, and been, chasing our own tails. We need Uranian energy. We need that to come in. We need an iconoclastic person to come in and shake things up and bring that sudden change and be crazy enough to believe that they can do it and strong enough to keep pushing for it, even though they meet resistance at every place. And I really admire that strength. I feel like Uranian people excite people as well. They excite other people a lot, because it's almost like a watch this space, what's coming next, or oh my god, they always have something crazy to say, or they always have something crazy to show me. So they can be really well liked for that, because no one knows what's going to come from them next. But at the same time, people may make fun of them because they're like, this person's like a bit, screw loose, or a little bit too eccentric, or giving a little bit too much of a mad scientist right now. And they might laugh at them at the same time. And so that's where this projection can come in from that. It's just people putting their own fears or their own doubts. Like, they could never do the things that you guys do. They could never think like that. They would never have the vision, let alone the courage or the confidence to actually just go out there and continue doing the thing, make the thing, express the thing, preach the thing, fight for the thing. They couldn't. They just couldn't. And that's why they have to make it your problem. And like I said, people like to be a part of a group and like to feel like they belong. So when there's an outlier and somebody that dares to dream larger and is bold enough or crazy enough to actually try and obtain that for everybody, you're going to be made fun of. And I feel like anyone with a lot of Uranian energy knows what I'm talking about. And fight the good fight, my friends. Like, keep whatever cause that you're passionate about, and you are so sharp mentally. You have a photographic memory. You have the ability to process information like a computer more efficiently. The way that Uranian people will recall things and regurgitate them, but it's not just like they regurgitate a fact like they haven't processed it. You can tell they've really thought about it, and they can understand and process information quickly, where they can give you an opinion on something and it's like, oh, you know what you're talking about. Oh, I actually trust your expertise because you've analyzed this and you've been as impartial as you could, and you're doing this from like a humanitarian perspective. You're doing it for the cause, for the group, for the people, for your family, for your community, whatever. Getting onto Plutonian energy now. Plutonian energy, you intoxicate people and magnetize people. You're very alluring, and it can be very sexy, but at the same time, it can be fucking terrifying for a lot of people. And the way people will project on you is, again, it's fears, but it's different fears. It's like if you had a mirror and you were, I don't know if I said this earlier, but I will repeat it if I have. It's like you have a mirror and you just reflect back to people their shadow. Like if someone could just see inside their own soul. And that scares people. Some people it excites because they're either on the path already and they have nothing to lose. They're ready to integrate some shit, or they are just by nature like that. And they want to see the darkness within themselves so that they can do something with it. They can play with it. They can grow it. They can integrate it, whatever. But then you have the people who are scared, and that's a lot of people. And so they make it your problem by, they see something in you where like you might be totally okay with people hating you or people not liking you and people not understanding you. It's probably a source of pain for you from your childhood and from your formative experiences, but you get to the point where you're like, that's just my life. That's what I have to deal with. There's people projecting onto me, and I'm just going to have to tell them to fuck off and go find my people or stick to myself. And it's because people are scared of you because you got power like that. Pluto will not only be transforming your life, but it will have other people's lives being transformed by association. And I think on some psychic subconscious level, everybody can pick up on that. In Plutonian people, they know, oh, this person's going to transform my life, and it isn't going to be smooth or pretty or fun all of the time. And sometimes it can be toxic. Sometimes you can be toxic because you yourself handle things in a toxic way when it comes to yourself, because that's just what works for you. That's just what you've been doing, and you can handle yourself. But bringing another person into the equation, they might not be ready for that sort of ride. It might be too intense, or it might be too harmful. And so when they come into your life, the brutality happens. It's not to say that you're abusive. I'm not saying that. I don't think Plutonian energy is just automatically abusive. I think it's intense. And I think when it's expressed in a way where it's not being given the grace or the appropriate grounds to express itself, or someone's trying to repress the nature of it, then it can explode and become a very dangerous thing as well, because it can. And in someone's chart, you can see if they have a potential to be a violent person. And Pluto does have something to do with that. But by no means am I saying that automatically Plutonian people are dangerous or abusive. So anyone that has any hate for that, get out of here now, because we're not doing that. But yeah, it's transformative. The nature of Pluto is one that is of death, and I think people know on some level that they're going to undergo a certain death, like probably dying themselves, an ego death, or a death to who they once were, and now they're being reborn. And often people get drawn to Plutonian energy because they want to change their life. They're probably really sick of how things are going. They're bored. They're tired. They're exhausted. They're at their wits' end, and they need a thrill, and they need to go down a dark hole, but it to be fun and intoxicating for the journey down. The journey back up is the part that's hard, in my opinion. On the fall down is usually the part where it's real hedonistic or just really intoxicating, that you don't even care when you experience the pain. But once you hit the bottom and you realize you're there and you have to climb back up, that's when it's hard. That's when you don't want to do the work and you want someone to rescue you out of the pit. And Pluto ain't going to do that for you. Pluto's like, you got to climb up out of here. And each climb you earn a little bit more courage, a little bit more strength and respect for yourself. And you will come out of it a better person, and you'll be very grateful for it. And so that's why I think it's important to not run away from Plutonian energy in your own chart and when you come across other people. But it's important to also understand the projections, because if you feel particularly triggered by a Plutonian person, ask yourself why. If it's not because they are obviously such a terrible person, like objectively speaking, why are you scared of this energy? Is it because this person represents taboos, that, you know, maybe they stir up some sort of sexual desire in you that you have felt you can't express out of shame or fear or ostracization or something. And this, you know, this person might stir it. Not even, sometimes you don't even need to have a sexual experience or encounter or type of relationship with a Plutonian person, but something about their energy gives kundalini even. And you can feel like a sexual energy emanates from them, and just watching them and being in their presence can have you thinking about that part of your life, your own sex life, or your own relationship to your sexuality. And maybe sometimes some people are undergoing sexual awakenings of all kinds, whether it's they're realizing that they're bisexual or they're gay or that they're outside of the box, that they might have different tastes when it comes to sex. All sorts of things. And a Plutonian person can kind of coax that out of them, even without trying, even without directly having that conversation. But if it's not about sex, because if we're talking about Scorpio energy, Scorpio does rule the genitals, so that can have a really big influence on them. If it's not about sex, then it's deep psychological transformation. You might have deep-seated anger in you that you feel you can't express to other people in your life or in other areas of your life. And a Plutonian person can trigger you, and you can realize you get really easily irritated or flustered or wound up in their presence for a number of reasons. Again, it could be because of some sexual repression, but it could just be because it's frustration that you don't express. And Pluto wants to release those sorts of things. It wants to kill what is not true to you. So where you are not being truthful to yourself, your life, and your situation, Pluto will want to rinse you of what is not true and give you back the truth. But it will be brutal. It will cut. It will be painful. Think about all the times that you have denied the truth in some way. You've lied to yourself. And when life and other people have forced you to acknowledge the truth of the reality that you live in, it was jarring. It was embarrassing. It was scary. It was sickening, and that's sort of what Pluto does. It reveals things because it's about truth. It's about refinement. It's about stripping things down and really getting to the bottom of it so that you can look at what is really there and decide what you want to do with it. That's Pluto. So I think people can be attracted to Pluto for those reasons, but also can be just reject that energy for those reasons. People don't want to look at their own darkness. They don't want to explore the taboo, but also at the same time, they do. And a part of them is calling when Pluto comes around. They want to go towards it and transform it, but they can't. And that's the same with Uranian energy. There's something about it that makes you want to go and be unbridled and free. And I think both Uranus and Plutonian energy are about freedom and are about truth. Pluto might be more on a personal psychological level within your closest relationships. And Uranus is about truth for the people, truth for the group. What is true for us all, keeping us all in mind? What is the best thing for us? How can we push forward, change in a way that is impactful, that deals with reality, but creates a better one? And that's sort of how I feel that they're similar and different at the same time, and how they're polarizing and controversial and provocative, but also sexy in their own ways. And so to end this out, Pluto is seductive in that typical dark way, kind of like if you think of the dark feminine or the dark masculine, the sexy, edgy person, or even emo, because that's really attractive for a lot of people, like an emo type of person. Someone who's sensitive, who has an edge to them, is maybe a little bit of an outcast or a loner. That sort of Plutonian energy can be sexy for a lot of people. If not, it's like the bad boy who will take you on a wild ride and you'll never be the same when you come out the other end. Pluto gives Hades as well. Like he's bad to the world but good to his woman, and he'd do anything he'd burn the entire world down for her. And that can be very sexy to a lot of people. But Hades deals with the underworld, and the underworld on a symbolic level is the subconscious. It's you go down there to fight demons, your own demons, and to integrate them, to actually make friends with them, not to banish them and shame them further. That's what keeps you and them separate, and you thinking that it's an outside entity to yourself, when it's not. It's just another aspect of you waiting to be integrated, waiting to be tamed or accepted and embraced with love. And then Uranian energy is like that androgynous, fluid, free, sexy energy that makes you question what is real and what you've always been attracted to or drawn to, what you've always known. And it's exciting because life can feel stagnant and boring and predictable, and then here's a Uranian person coming in just making you question everything you've ever believed in or known or seen. And there's nothing more attractive than knowing you're about to embark on some adventure that will have you opening up and expanding to what the hell is out there and what's even possible for you and the world. That's so sexy. And Yeah, Uranian energy is like exploring something that's yet to be known, yet to be conquered, yet to be seen, yet to be understood. And yes, that's scary, but it's also it's like an adventure. And when you know you're going to go on that adventure with somebody else, which Uranus is about the group, I mean, it can be, it wants to move the group and the community into that. So you get to do it with people. Whereas Plutonian energy is like conquering the underworld and overcoming something that feels stupefying or intoxicating and hard to possess, hard to grasp. You need to kind of get in a dance with it and figure out what it is, and you need to seduce it into integrating with yourself. And that's how shadow work is often. You have to coax things out of your own subconscious, and you have to meditate on them for a little bit, or you have to go into some sort of trance if you can and actually talk to your subconscious. If you're familiar with Carl Jung, you know that he did that a lot, like with his red book stuff. When he would go into meditation, he would talk to different parts of his own subconscious, and they would manifest as things separate to him, obviously, and talk to him and tell him about hell and all sorts of things. That's sort of Plutonian energy, and that can be terrifying sometimes, but incredibly empowering at the same time when you understand what it's doing. And so people projecting onto these energies when it's negative is usually just because they don't understand it yet, and they don't understand the relationship that energy has to themselves, what it's telling them about themselves. Because ultimately, your reaction to anything is telling you about yourself. Good, bad, neutral. It's telling you that you like something, that something is your kin, of you need more of, or it's telling you, hey, this thing is of you, but you're refusing to acknowledge that because you may have had a formative experience where this was shamed in you, where you were shown that people get ostracized for this, people get beaten up for this, they get whatever, something negative. And so you were like, that's not me. I can't be like that. And you've had years to train yourself to be part of the group and not stand out on your own the way Uranus does and the way Pluto does as well. So that was a long ramble, but I hope that illuminated a couple things about those two energies. If there's other planets that you would like me to compare and talk about, draw parallels with, but also differentiate, let me know. I'll be happy to do a video on it. I could talk about this stuff forever, and hopefully I didn't ramble on too long for anybody, but please subscribe to the channel and like if you really enjoy this sort of sit down talk stuff about astrology. But I also talk about death in an esoteric sense. I talk about the female spiritual path. I will be in the future talking more about creation stories and myths and all sorts of things. You can't, like my description says, you can't know what I'm going to post. It could be anything at this point. So if you enjoyed that, please show your support in the comment section by liking this video. And if you want to see more, subscribe. Let me know what you have in your chart, if you can even relate to these energies, if any of your experiences early on in your life, reflect either one of these, because we all have Uranus and Pluto somewhere in our chart as well. Just some of us have those energies more intensely because we have a lot of aspects to them, or we have them in the first house. I'll probably do a video on Neptune soon because I have a ton of Neptunian energy in my chart, and I love rambling about Neptune. So until next time, bye.